Looks like 2024, just like 2023, right, Ron?
Uh-huh.
Wanted and needed.
We're getting ready for the art show, so. All right, we are live and recording. Lee, you can start whenever you're ready.
We are ready. We have a quorum for the Forestation Board, and both Sylvia and Connie Kuhn said they couldn't make this particular meeting. But as I said, we have the 3 members necessary for a quorum. We have the mayor, we have our wonderful consultant, so we should go ahead. And the first item on the agenda is the review and approval of minutes of December 14.
And it needs a correction.
Okay.
It's not in the body copy, but I picked up the old heading, so it says November 14th instead of December. But I think the rest of it's pretty accurate.
I read it last night. I didn't notice anything about the date, frankly, but the content seemed fine to me.
Okay, I make a motion for approval
Oh, as amended.
as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. Next item is a mayor's update.
So Sunday from 2 to 5 will be the opening of Art in City Hall, and I hope everyone will be able to attend. It's the exhibition. Monday's a holiday, but the exhibition will be open on Monday, also from 2 to 5. So City Hall will be open for purposes of people visiting the art show, and then that will continue through March 8th. So, and they're hanging it now. It looks spectacular. City Hall has never looked so good.
Good.
The art is being displayed in the council room and in the conference room, and it just looks terrific.
Now,
so,
are the artists going to be there?
I think so.
Okay.
I expect there are 11 artists, and I'm sure some, if not all of them.
Okay. Wonderful.
And the art's for sale, and that's between the buyer and the artist. We don't do anything other than put the two together. But I think it's going to be terrific. It looks great what they've done so far. Kathy Sauer is the chair of the committee and has just done a great job. She herself is an artist. Her art is not going to be in this exhibition, but they're already planning a future exhibition.
That's great.
Just Prospect artists, just City of Prospect artists. So it's pretty exciting. And beyond that, I don't think I've really got anything else to report. I think things are going well. City's functioning. We had cleanup day in City Hall. We did this a year ago. We did it again earlier this week. So we got things cleaned up a little more and old things thrown out, things straightened up.
Could you comment on the code enforcement officer change?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Mike Thomas, who is a retired City of Prospect police officer, he retired in September, has started right at the end of the year as a temporary code enforcement officer. And he had been offered the position. It's a part-time position, but he'd been offered that position, and he accepted it on a temporary basis. But now he's told us that he plans to stay indefinitely, and we're delighted.
That's good.
Good news.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he knows the people of Prospect. He knows the city of Prospect. He knows the staff. He knows the police. So he's a perfect choice for that position.
Yes, he is. He has a nice way of dealing with people.
Mhm.
Got a great personality and very effective.
Great.
We're delighted.
Mhm.
Anything else, Doug?
No, I mentioned in the report during the council meeting, we've faced some challenges with competition for police officers. So we've got 1 or 2 vacancies we've had one officer poached, for lack of a better word, by another police department, Oldham County. And it's just a very competitive environment, and officers are in great demand. And we've got a core group who are going to stay. I feel real confident will stay, but then there's some people who haven't been here quite as long and don't have the level of integration maybe into the police department. So we're just like everybody else. We're looking for good officers, and it's tough.
Yes, I was in Washington Airport recently, DC, and I think I saw a sign that said, looking for police officers, $15,000 signing bonus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, one of our officers was offered a position in another jurisdiction for $7,000 more plus a car.
Wow.
So that's the environment right now, and we're not going to be able to compete in every case, but we need to be reasonable, certainly, in compensation.
Mhm.
One of the things that is stated in the minutes just approved is that during the last meeting, it was stated that the city would contact the property owners involved with a dead pine in the area of Gunson Lane and ask them to reconcile the ownership so that that whoever is responsible could take remedial action. So maybe that's something Mike Thomas could do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it had fallen off my radar. And I'm making a note, and I'll get with Mike, and maybe Herb can help point us in the right direction. We can try to help.
Good. Okay, if that's all from the mayor, next would be Andrea.
Good afternoon. I think the first thing I had to mention was what Lee just did about that dead pine tree. I was going to inquire what the status of that was, so that's already been discussed. I think that's probably all I have. Other than there's an insect update, there's a insect called a lanternfly that has affected the East Coast. It's a new bug from Asia that you may or may not have read about, but it's been gradually making its way towards Kentucky, and it crossed the river into northern Kentucky. So it's something over time we'll need to be aware of. I can probably send some information out about it just so you can read about it. It's an insect that feeds on the foliage of different types of trees. Its host plant is a mimosa tree, which tends to be kind of a weed tree, but it also affects other shade trees like maple trees and so forth. It can be a nuisance in your yard in the summer. It's just generally a nuisance, and it does do damage to, it likes to feed on the leaves of plant material. So I just thought I'd mention it. It's not in Louisville yet. It's not near Louisville, but it kind of crossed over. I can't remember the county now, but it crossed from southwestern Ohio into Kentucky. So we'll have to be on the lookout for it. I'll send some information out. So in the summertime, if you start seeing it in your yards or you see it anywhere in the city, we can stay on top of it.
It's
Okay.
a very colorful bug, so it's too
is.
bad it's mean.
Right. It's about 1.5 inches, and it's red, white, and black, and it's very easy to identify. I was at my daughter's house a couple of years ago. She lives in the Philadelphia area, and that's one of the areas it started in. And they were just all over in the summer on different shrubs and, you know, just in courtyards. And we were walking to dinner one night and just the whole courtyard on an office building was covered. So even the patio itself. So it's easy to identify and so we just need to be aware of it as it develops. But right now it's not in Louisville, so that's a good thing.
Yeah,
That's
what's
the best.
what's it called?
It's called a lanternfly. It's a spotted lanternfly, I guess I should call it, but it's got spotted black spots on its wings, and it has part of its wings are red, so it's pretty easy to identify. But it likes a wide variety of food to feed on, so that's just why I mention it.
Andrea, I know it damages the foliage. Does that mean it damages the tree itself?
Well, if it goes untreated, you know, for a while, you know, like year after year, yes, I would say it could damage trees, and it would be particularly harmful on young trees. You know, they're just trying to get established and trying to get their roots established and that kind of thing. So
And
on
is
our
there,
younger trees that have been planted in the city more recently, those are the ones, you know, we should keep an eye on.
is there a treatment?
Yes, they can be sprayed. So I will definitely send some information out so you can be aware of it. And I think that's all I have, Lee. I don't have anything else new today.
Andrea, I was thinking ahead about the canopy tree program.
Mm-hmm.
We said we would offer it maybe in January and then plant the trees in March. And what I'm asking you is if you could prepare a list of recommended trees, maybe it's just the same ones that we've previously used, whatever you think is appropriate.
Sure. I think we could probably, I think you'll have plenty of time if we get a list together. I mean, I can get you a list, but I mean,
Sure, yeah.
I don't think, I mean, when would you want to send out? Are you going to send like an email blast out or put it in a newsletter, or what, how would you get the word out to the rest?
Yes, if a newsletter is timely, I would use it. If not, in email blast, we've used both, you know?
Yeah.
Probably after the January meeting, the board could, or rather the February meeting, we're ahead of the January meeting right now. The board needs to approve it, and then we'll just send it out and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And could the
Yeah,
list,
I'm just thinking if you send it out to, you know, I would think you probably want to, I mean, just a thought, maybe send it out in, I don't know when, possibly a February newsletter would be, but if it was in the first half of the month, it would still probably give you enough time to order trees. I just, whatever, but I'll get you a list. Yeah, I'll get you a
Okay.
list and you can decide what you want to do with it or when you want to send it out and all that good stuff.
Sure. And if the timing is
Hey,
tight,
hey,
we'll always
Lee?
have a special meeting. Yes.
yeah, I guess my garden club influence is working on me. Can the trees strictly be native trees that's on the list?
Well, I think you should have a combination. Of course, you asked Lee that, so Lee should answer first.
Well, I
Well, I
know,
know there's a preference for native trees, and maybe there's enough suitable, appropriate canopy trees to offer. If not, I think we should go with Andrew's recommendations as in the past, plant the most suitable tree for the situation. Now, we
Yeah.
cannot put non-native trees, for example, in Putney Lane, and I know that Linda Wardell doesn't like to plant them anywhere in the parks.
That's
But
right.
we're talking about offering these to residents. But Andrew could take
Well,
a note.
Put
to
Herb on the
offer
list with Linda.
native trees.
The
So-
only thing that my only thoughts are on that, I know there's a big push for native trees, and I like native trees as well as anybody else. It's very important to select the right tree for the right location.
Mhm.
And native trees don't always do well in our disturbed sites. You know, when we have construction sites and when we build new homes, most of us are dealing with disturbed sites. In other words, and a lot of times when, as you probably know, when developers first develop a piece of property, they push all the topsoil to the side. And we're dealing with B and C subsoils, which are very poorly drained, usually heavy clay. Now where you're dealing, so that's an issue for some native trees. Not all of them. There's been a lot of newer trees that have been developed and over the last, and more importantly, varieties of trees that have been developed over the last 20 or 30 years that do much better in some of those urban sites. So it kind of depends on where, I mean, if you're talking about the parks where it's been undisturbed, certainly native trees are great. But there definitely is a place in my mind for a combination of both in other areas where we are dealing with, you know, poor, heavy clay soils, etc. So, but that doesn't mean we have to, you know, you certainly have to do that. But I think there is another side to the native tree, you know, push.
If what I've been learned, educated about, I mean, I noticed watching the squirrels and the birds, you know, getting the seeds from my dogwood trees. And so I take it from what I've learned, those are not Coosa dogwoods, those are more native because the animals don't really care for the Coosa dogwood, whatever they do. So, I mean, it was really interesting watching these critters enjoy the fruits
Sure.
of the yard. So,
So
and I hear you. I hear you. But most, you know, we're in an area now that's I'm not going to call urban, and most of the things were built 40 years ago. So it's hopefully the soils have got to the degree at least of not being new soils anyway.
I'm
So
even thinking about, you know, Little Hunting Creek Park where the new parking lot development was and the new playground area. That area was, you know, disturbed. And a lot of our, you know, if you go through with a soil probe and probe a lot of the soils we have in some of the medians and some of these other areas, they're still pretty heavy clay. So I'm not saying that the native trees can't withstand that. I'm just saying that sometimes there is a place that they're valuable. And you know, maybe we shouldn't always rule them out. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
So I'll try to get a list of native trees to you and see what the availability is. They won't have their spring availability available until next month. So I'm just gonna take it off what they were offering last fall, which is typically most of the time what they'll offer this spring. And that, you know, there are some trees that can be dug in the spring that we couldn't offer in the fall. So that's another advantage. And they're native, like black gums and some of the oaks, some of the white oaks, which are also native. So that's a good thing. So
good.
you'll have plenty of native trees to, you know, select
Okay.
from.
Good.
Lee,
Okay,
Lee,
yes,
the, Rick and I were talking with at least one of the homeowners, those 3 homeowners on Timber Ridge, where the trees need to be replaced. And it sort of went by the wayside. It might be good. This might be a good opportunity to go back to those folks and introduce them to the tree canopy program and work with them to identify a tree that might be a good replacement tree. And I know you'd want it to be in a different location than the one that's removed and that sort of thing, but it might be a good time to close that loop.
Yes, it would be, you're right. That would be a great
Mhm.
time to, you know, hopefully we have a lot of, you know, hopefully the word will get out to a lot of the other residents in that area of the landings.
I think we can, what I'm really thinking is approaching those three homeowners specifically. and
Right,
saying-
no, I know.
Yeah, and I think if that's something that somebody on the forestation board could take on, that could be a real positive, a big help.
Well, if I nominated Connie, y'all probably think I'm lousy. But
Well,
I
Connie,
can go along, but I'll throw my hat in the ring. But be good to have somebody else too, a couple of people.
You are always nominating Connie.
She loves me.
Like her a
She
lot.
loves me.
it's no coincidence that Connie's not here to defend herself.
That's easy.
true, too.
Right.
Mhm.
There's one other thing that I mentioned, reminded me when we talked about the pine on Winston, that, and that is the pine tree at the country club on
Yes,
Hunter Creek Drive. That tree has been trimmed back by AT&T. They didn't do a lot, but apparently they did enough to satisfy themselves that their lines are safe from the removal of that tree. And the country club knows that work's been done. So I guess the question then is when they're going to do something.
yes, because that tree, as you've seen, has dead branches, lower branches that could hit the street if they fall. So, I mean, that whole, the rest of that tree, obviously that tree is in serious decline. So that might be good to touch base with them if somebody could. And they might be able to get a better deal on tree removal in the winter, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes tree companies will give a little bit of a discount in the winter months when they're slow.
Who dealt with them before?
I think Lee did.
I think Lee did.
I don't know. Can he hear us?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you. And
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you're on mute or something. Sorry.
I'm just remembering Herb and I met with Zeke there, who's the manager several
Zeke?
months ago. And that was the request of Frank Fulcher. And we discussed, among other things, whether the club could get trees from the city. And then the board specifically voted that the club could have a canopy tree without cost. And they would plant it as they would plant it themselves with professional staff. So certainly when a canopy tree list becomes available, we would contact Zeke and offer them a choice along that line. Probably none of those trees would be suitable for planting under a power line. That's a whole nother matter. And-
Yeah, I hope we don't really want them to plant under a power line. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, and I hadn't thought about that. I remember now that you all had made that decision that it'd be appropriate for them to get a tree through the canopy tree program. So it sounds like now's the right, or not now, but just in the next few weeks, it's going to be the right time to approach them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we could ask him maybe to take out that, let's say offending tree, or really useless tree as part of their program.
Hazard tree. I would say hazard tree.
You would say hazardous tree. Well,
Absolutely.
we would say hazardous, then they should be required to remediate it.
Is there any advantage to waiting to have it removed until closer to the time they plant a new one? I mean, we don't want them to plant in the same spot. So
No, they shouldn't.
Yeah, you know,
I think that. Go ahead.
I don't think we have gotten back with Zeke about, he asked about that. I don't think we have gotten back to him. I mean, the board did approve that. So.
I never got, I said I would get back to him. And I have not, but I was really waiting till we had the canopy tree list available.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna
So-
send you the canopy list in the next day or two. So, but I would recommend that we try to encourage them to get it removed this winter. I mean, it can
Okay.
definitely drop branches and
Okay.
start falling apart. and it's very
Okay.
close to the
They're,
road.
they're pretty receptive. That's.
Oh, they're very receptive. They're very agreeable and they're good corporate good citizens.
Okay, when I get that list, I'll talk to Zeke and, probably, we don't need to send them a letter, but, in any case, I'll follow up.
That'd be
That's
great, Lee. If you need any help from me on that, let me know, but he's a good guy and they're a good part of the community.
Yeah, he was very open when Herb and I talked with him. Okay, there was nothing else from Andrea. Linda Knox is going to report on, council discussions, which, occurred on January 3 and the subsequent follow-up, by Frank Fulcher and perhaps others. You want to go ahead, Linda?
Oh, sure. I think some of you are probably aware that at the December council meeting, as there were discussions on the work that's being done on the forestation ordinance, that it was going to take more study, more work, and involve us as well as council to come up with something that really was clear and usable and empowered people where needed to get things done. So we protect our canopy and grow the canopy. So at that meeting, it was decided there would be a subcommittee, which was Frank Fulcher, David Hines, Sarah Hines, and David Holmes. And so they established a public meeting that you probably all got the newsletter on, that was on December 3rd. So Lee and I went, and John Clark was already there. And the subcommittee had already had
On
some
January
discussions.
January 3rd. January,
No, it was
no,
December
Yeah,
3rd.
January,
we met.
January 3rd, that's right.
Was it
The
January?
meeting we talked about was the January 3rd meeting.
Yes,
no,
it was.
it was January 5th.
We're still stuck in December.
It was January 5th, I think.
But
I think
in
it was-
any event, it was Friday, I guess it was January 5th, and the five of us were there, and it was a very good open discussion. The council members shared some of their primary concerns that they want to address as a priority, and some of it was dealing with responsibility of commercial development and where they get approvals and what their obligations are when they take out street trees. And that was very good, because I think some of it is driven by, the project at Chase. And we saw, I guess we received something from Chase that we said we were not comfortable with. And I think we were expecting an updated plan from them. And certainly some of the considerations were that if you take out 10 trees, Mr. Commercial Developer, you need to put in 10 trees. But the thought might be, well, maybe the new development itself will not allow space for 10 trees to be planted, but they still have an obligation. So what happens if there's a plan that makes sense and they plant 5? Can we get 5 trees to use elsewhere in the city? So there's a lot of just different ideas being bounced around. And of course, then some of the consideration deals with trying to say who's responsible for what I guess we've always considered private trees, which are in right of way. So then are they public trees, and whose responsibility is that? So that's another area of discussion. And so we were looking at a lot of different duties of who does what and how they felt the role of forestation might change in reviewing permits, increasing the budget for public tree maintenance, and could we do an estimate on some of those things? And then to see where we go from here and continue the discussion. We were also talking about what sorts of language was used by other tree cities in our area, or even other information. I had received some information from Chicago. John Clark suggested we might want to see what Naperville, Illinois does. He thought that was a city very much like ours, to see how they handled trees. And as you look at these, some of the definitions really are quite different, and sometimes I think they're clearer. So we're gathering information. But since we had that meeting, I guess the council members got together and said that, this formal process is kind of slow moving and they want to be able to do more activity. So Frank suggested that they create I guess it's called a working group that is not bound by some of the notices and can be more informal. And Frank offered to head that up, and I think he asked for one representative from Forestation, and he asked if I would do that, and I discussed it with Lee, and he's very comfortable that, we definitely want a participant in this project. And then Frank also talked to Sandra Leonard, who obviously has a lot of council information and experience in ordinance, and he also talked to Greg Hulsman, another former council member and a longtime member of the Forestation Board. So this, I think, activity will be brought to council, I think, tomorrow for approval. And if that's the case, I think they have scheduled a meeting on the 19th to, continue the discussions on our findings from these other communities and to address the more imminent issues within the current standard.
Okay, there's nothing that's being brought before the council that I'm aware of. This is all news to me.
Okay, well, I'd talk to Frank or David or Sarah because I think they feel that this working group is supposedly something that can be held more informally and as needed.
Okay, well, I've got a real strong problem with that, of not having notice of the meetings. Particularly, I just think that's really inappropriate. I
Well,
don't see
the
any
question I
problem.
said that, can we actually do that? And Frank said, yes, you could. And
Whether we can or not, the question is, do we want to?
that's a
I
fair
don't think we
question.
want to be in a position where people are in a back room, smoke-filled room, writing our ordinances, particularly when they're no longer on the council. So I just think that it's an unusual approach. I don't think it reflects what I want as mayor. I don't want to speak for the council, but I'd be surprised if the council would support that. And maybe they would. But that's something that needs further discussion. And to my knowledge, there's nothing scheduled to come before the council along those
Okay,
lines.
well, my understanding was they were gonna, in some formal way, get it approved so we could have this
Well,
meeting on the
I
19th. So
don't think,
maybe
I don't
it goes
think that's
back.
happened.
Okay, well, I would go out to the three council members and say, okay, if you want to do this, let's stay with the subcommittee and the
But-
open
but-
meetings, and we'll do something that John sends out a notice that we're there at City Hall on the 19th and anybody can come.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's a problem to have notice of the meetings. The meetings can be totally informal. But when we set this up, I expressed a real concern about, I was put off by the fact that Frank had that meeting with you and Lee, and I was told not to come. And he wouldn't come if I did come. He set the meeting at the country club, which is not a public venue. So I just have a real problem with this approach. And that's just my view. And I think we need something that's more open and more transparent.
And I think the discussion we had at the January meeting was that kind of open discussion that we were back.
It can be totally open. It can be totally informal.
It was,
It doesn't
and
need-
anybody could have come in, that would be welcome to come in.
Exactly.
Maybe
But it
that's,
sounds like they're trying to set something up that people aren't welcome to come in. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say. And I have,
hello?
We lost you.
lost me.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
back
just-
now.
Just there for a minute, yes.
Yeah, you're back. Okay.
Okay, well, I just
No,
said I have a real problem with that.
I am-
approach.
I have no problem with that either. I just was concerned that, are we doing two separate things and is that appropriate?
Well, we are doing two separate things, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we kind of get that sorted out now, it's not going to happen and we can continue with the subcommittee and their open meetings and I can
It's-
continue to attend those meetings, Lee and anybody else from Forestation that's available that can attend would also join us. And, you know, if Greg wants to come, if Sandra wants to come, or anybody else in the community.
Well, I'm going to bite my tongue. I've probably said too much.
Well, I'm glad to hear your viewpoint, Mayor.
I'll just mention 3 of those people who want to be on this separate committee walked out of a council meeting, so we didn't have a budget for a year. So this is not a group that's proven themselves to be receptive to openness and participation by all comers.
Understand.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I think that clears up a lot of things, that we will continue to work with the subcommittee as it was established, and continue working on the ordinance.
Well, that's my point of view. I mean, the
Mhm.
council may have a
That'll
different
work.
perspective, and that's up to the council, but I have pretty strong feelings about it. In case you haven't noticed.
No, no problem. We respect that. That's okay. And as you said, transparency, I think, is very important to anything we're doing. And, you know, the contributions of different people are important. I think that's kind of settled that for now. Lee, do you want to move on to the next topic, or are there any further comments on this
Well,
one?
I want to go on to Chase Bank. However, we had some positive input from the various council members at this January 5 meeting, in that particularly Sarah and David were saying that, of course, Chase should be required to replace trees, but not with little finger diameter trees,
Mhm.
but the most suitable ones that could be planted there. And they specifically asked if Andrea could recommend the caliper, and I would add to that the species of any replacement trees appropriate for that location. And the other item related to that, but Sarah suggested that if there's a lack of suitable planting space, that a Chase could donate money for trees to be planted in other public areas. The third thing, John Clark was there, and he did not address the group as a whole, but he addressed Linda and I. He was particularly concerned about the large trees in front of the existing Kroger sign and losing them. And he had some photos he had taken from Google Maps. However, those photos were several years old, but they did show a crowding of trees around that sign in the rear of it. And he was suggesting that the smallest kind of center tree could be removed, and that would help the other surrounding trees with giving them space to grow and expand, and would simultaneously help Chase, and it would open up the view a little bit there.
Yeah, those are crabapple trees that are near the sign, and then there's red maples that fan out from that point on either side, larger shade trees. So he's talking about removing the crab apples, which are closer to the sign, I think, right?
I think that's right.
Mhm, I think so.
Was there any comment on that from Andrew or anybody?
Well, I don't know if that would be acceptable. I mean, that might be a way to have to look at the exact placement of those crab apples. I was out there the other day and took some photos, and now I'm trying to look for the photos I took real quick. I don't know what happened to them at the moment, but And then, and then see if they would be agreeable to leaving the rest, Lee, is that what you're saying, or what he said?
Yeah, we might say, yes, you could remove that one tree. I don't think we probably have jurisdiction within the Kroger lot itself, but we certainly have jurisdiction over street trees. And those trees are adjoining the street. And
So you're,
we could, if we can think about how, beside them replacing a few trees in that area, how many trees should they, or how much in the way of funds should they donate for planting as reciprocal in public areas? Donate to the city or the Forestation Board budget, that would be fine. And we'd also need, Andrew, your recommendation as the type of trees that they would plant anywhere, I think, within the parking lot or anywhere, if they're gonna plant any trees. We had discussions before when Kroger built that area, and particularly when they put in the fuel station, that some where there's a lot of pavement than others. And would need your recommendation on that. And as I remember specifically, when the Kroger had hired some kind of a architect consultant, the trees that individual had proposed were not the ones that you thought were the best for planting in those high pavement areas. So anyhow, we're looking for your recommendation. And I'm also thinking, so we need to get back to Chase in a fair manner. I would hope maybe you and Herb could work together. Anybody else on the board could also join that team and come up with a set of recommendations as to how we should get back to Chase at the earliest practical period of time. Could that be done?
It's fine with me. I'm just a little, I would need to meet probably Herb out there or somebody on site.
Yeah, Herb is
To be
great.
sure that I'm clear.
I'm available.
All of the trees that they want to remove. I mean, so all of the trees going down, not the trees around the Kroger sign or whatever, but as you proceed down, it be turning into the shopping center, but as you proceed past that on Timber Ridge down to the next entrance to the shopping center, in that general area, they want to remove those trees. Is that what am I correct in that, Lee, or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I'm not sure either.
I think you and Herb, and if someone else wants to join you, you would be perfect.
Let me ask you all a question, and maybe this would be best for the mayor, but are they going to, I mean, I have what Rhonda Hillis sent out, but are they going to access the bank by driving into the shopping center, like, or will they have an exit ingress egress off of Timber Ridge directly into their?
They will not have ingress and egress from Timber Ridge directly.
Yeah.
People
Okay.
will enter from the existing Kroger parking lot.
Right. Yeah. Well, Herb, and I'm happy if Herb wants to meet out there sometime soon and we can look at it, and we can come up with some recommendations. I also think it would be good if the city would, or the Forestation Board would make recommendations for changing out a few of the species of trees that they have listed on their landscape plant list, because a couple of them are just extremely bad choices, in my opinion. They're short-lived. They have all kinds of problems. One of them has thorns on them that are, I don't know, 3-4 inches long. I don't know why they would choose a species like that for a public, area. So, I mean, they're just not typically used. And so, but we could advise them on a better tree to substitute if they were willing to do that.
My guess is that they'd be receptive and easy to work with. That would be my guess.
And, they're specifying 1.5-inch caliper, as you know, trees. And it would also be great if we could get them to increase that caliper to 2-inch, which is more of a standard size. 1.5 inches is very small and it takes them forever to get established. They may, 1.5 inch trees may only be, 5-6 feet tall at the most. Whereas if you get into a 2-inch tree, it's going to look like something. It's going to give you more presence initially going in, and it will help soften the blow here, taking out, if we have to take out some of these or agree to take out some of these larger trees.
Can the city print the latest Chase drawing? My printer is not working. Can the city do that? And I'd stop by
I'd
and
be
pick
happy
it
to
up.
do it.
I think
You
John
don't
Carter's
realize-
on the line right
Well,
now.
You don't realize this is preliminary and that's not.
I
something
have the one that Rhonda sent me back in December. Has it changed since then? Or the initial one she sent then?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So the one I have is, I think, marked preliminary, isn't it? It's one that Sandra, I think, forwarded to everybody earlier. But
Hey,
they have
John,
not submitted anything
Can
official.
you speak just a little louder?
Okay. The mic issue.
Well, maybe you could just send out the most recent one you have, John, again, to be
I
sure we all.
can, again, like I
same
say,
one?
this isn't something they've officially submitted.
Oh.
So as I've told them, because this is all based on the assumption that the trees will block their signage. Well, we have pretty strict sign ordinances. So they may come to find that the signs that they dream of, they will not be able to have to begin with, and maybe they will not want to cut any trees anyway. Sort of my hope. But in any case, they're supposed to come back with a final tree plan when they come back with a sign permit request.
So this is probably a good time to have input now before they come back.
Yeah, the recent correspondence from their primary contact implied that they were looking for approval to
Right.
go proceed with what they had already put in. It was somewhat surprising to us because we were expecting a new plan. And the other thing I wanted to add is that Sarah, for sure, Sarah Hines and David, I think, pretty much said that Andrea should specify the most suitable calipers,
Mhm.
and then Chase would have to do that. And that wouldn't be, I think, any kind of major financial impact on them, but would improve the forestry aesthetics quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a discrepancy there or not in what they think and what John said about the signage and all that, because they sent Lee and I an email. I think that's what you're referencing, Lee, on
Yes.
on January 2nd, which I'll be happy to share with the rest of you.
Oh, interesting. I didn't
But
know
it
that.
says, just following up to see if there's any determination made from the Forestation Committee if Chase will be able to remove the trees on the Kroger parcel at the intersection entry of the shopping center. Is there any direction I can provide to the Chase design and construction team? Which I kind of left that up to Lee to respond to any of it because I'm not privy to the latest, but
We haven't
would
given
answer
any
that.
response. We had some
Right.
good input, and I think Hugh and Herb could come up with recommendations. We can review them even in a special forestation meeting and get back to Chase and says, this is what needs to be done if you want to proceed.
But as
You-
the
you know-
only other thing that confuses me or it doesn't confuse me, but to John's point, I guess your point was that maybe it needs to be waited till they apply for their sign. and
I think
forth.
so.
And
I wouldn't,
when does that happen along the process of all this? Or when
Well, we
do
got our building plans today. I imagine it's pretty soon, this spring at the earliest. I know they want to break ground pretty soon, so,
I think the
Mike,
sooner
you-
you're
you
in
haven't
touch
heard
with them, the
anything
better.
from-
Even if it's just to tell them,
You haven't heard anything from Chase and Signs or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did review the print.
Well, my thought would be,
Yeah.
we're concerned with Forestation. And if they have a conflict with the sign ordinance, they need to change their sign to fit in with the foliage.
Okay,
But, you know,
that's
we,
fine. They're just talking about trees here.
yeah, excuse me, one thing. You know, we actually have two different things. They have a site. In the drawing I looked at today, it's strictly their site.
Right.
And they wanted to see. Now, there's an area that Kroger owns, that's not leasing, but her little emails are talk about that piece of ground for approval. That's a different, that's not Chase, that's Kroger. And that's where possibly where their sign's gonna go. Maybe, I mean, nobody knows, so. But
Now, they have told us that Kroger has told them they can pretty much do whatever they want, provided they get permission and they pay.
Don, you're gonna need to pull your microphone closer. We can't hear you.
Guess I need a new mic.
Or I can't hear you.
Uh,
That's
Kroger,
better.
according to Chase, has approved anything they want to do as long as they pay for it and we approve it. Did that come through?
Yes.
So what I'm suggesting is it'd probably be good to get communication with them sooner rather than later about, for example, the 2-inch trees. I mean, I think if they hear this now and they hear we're going to suggest certain species and we haven't picked those out yet or whatever, they just, I think it would be helpful if they knew where we stand right now. And we know we want bigger trees, so I think we ought to consider letting them know that, not waiting until we know everything.
Well, that's a good thing. And then along with the caliper, the species. And then
Right.
you can recommend those very quickly.
Well, how about Herb, we set a time sometime next week or whatever,
yeah,
when it's not 0. It's gonna be cold beginning of the week, but seriously, sometime next week and just be sure I'm on the same wavelength as what everybody else is.
what's your Monday like, Andrea?
Um, you know, I probably could have some time on Monday. How about I just email you? Let me look at
Yeah.
my schedule and we'll
Okay.
figure out
And-
something soon. Okay.
And
I
John,
don't wanna-
yeah, John Carter, can you print that drawing?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll
And I
come
think-
down, I'll pick it up.
Lee
Okay.
and Linda, if you all could, I would encourage you to go ahead and respond to that email and just say, we appreciate hearing from you. We would like to have 2-inch trees. We're working on responding further. Just let them know that you're engaged. And if we've not responded at all to the email they sent.
I haven't. Did you respond to it, Lee?
Say that again?
Did you respond to the January 2nd email that Rhonda sent you and
No.
me?
I didn't make
Can
any
you,
response.
can you, do you
Change
want to
whatsoever.
respond to what the mayor's asking?
Yeah, Lee,
I
my
think-
suggestion.
I did not respond, but I think if you and Herb can quickly decide on what should be done around the Kroger sign, which is the biggest issue, I think, for everybody.
I don't think they've submitted anything on the Kroger's on that.
Well, we can submit what we think that say you can't do this or that.
Well, first of all, let's talk about their property.
Yeah, I think we need to start with that too.
And I think the mayor's got a good idea. We at least get back and say 2-inch caliber. We know that. So since we know it, let's respond and say we're looking into this. We have some ideas about the species and we'll get back to you next week.
And
Okay.
we appreciate hearing from you. We need to work with you on this and 2-inch trees and, just let them know where we are right now and that we're appreciative that they got in touch with us and we want to engage with them.
Yeah.
Well, her inquiry was more about what's going to happen around the existing Kroger sign.
I'm gonna
That's
send
what-
that email to you and to you, Mayor, here in just a second that she sent.
Well, their email might be about that, but they submitted a plan that shows strictly the Chase property. That's the one we deal with.
Okay. So I think the consensus is we, and that would be I, can easily respond, that we're going to require at least 2-inch caliber trees. Species may change pending our arborist recommendation. And 3, we're looking into what might be done around the sign, but not prepared to take final position yet. Would that be appropriate?
Let me ask a question, and I just don't know the answer to this. Are we in a position to require 2-inch trees, or can we just encourage that, or what's the lay of the land on, what are the rules of engagement on that? I just don't know.
You probably only can encourage them, right?
I don't think there's anything in the current ordinances that
Right.
require a particular
Right.
species or size.
Yeah, so I think we're encouraging, we would encourage that. And I think they'd benefit from that. It would be,
Mhm.
guessing it would be a relatively
Enhance the
nominal
building.
additional cost.
Yeah, this is a multi-million dollar deal. They get that branch in there, so they're not going to quibble over that.
No,
This is regular
and
public.
they're just looking, I think what my sense would be, they're looking for a partner to communicate with, to come up with something that's agreeable to us and to them. They just want to engage.
7115. And it should be 7114.
So maybe Lee could do that, the 3 points he mentioned, and then Herb and I'll meet first of the week and we can add to whatever that is or run it by you all and then add anything that
Yeah,
is
could somebody,
agreeable.
did you say you're sending that, Andrea, that email?
I think Lee was gonna send it, but
I was going to.
Maybe I've already got it. If I have,
I
I've
just
forgotten
I
it.
just sent you a copy. I just sent you
Thank
a
you.
copy and I sent John a copy. You should be getting.
Thanks.
So if Doug, if you want to respond or John responds, fine with me.
Yeah, it's not that I want to, I just think we need to communicate and get the lines of communication open. The way I take what you've told me is they're looking to communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that takes 2 sides and we're the other side, so we need to engage. I take it as a good sign that they reached out.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to do that? Am I to do that or you're going to do that?
I think somebody from Forestation should do it, but what I would suggest if somebody will prepare a draft, I'd like to see it before it goes. And maybe if I could be copied on it when it goes,
Oh, sure.
that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I'll do it. This is going to be a pretty short email.
Exactly.
I'll
Good.
send it to you as a draft.
Short, yeah, short is good.
Okay. Any other discussion about that issue?
No.
Okay.
I'm glad
then.
you are paying attention to it. It's good.
I have another thing. I need to contact Don Grader. And I thought I had his email, but the one I have is when he was a city councilman, so that email is not going to go anywhere.
I can send you an email. I mean, his email address because
Thank
he's
you.
a neighbor.
Thank
And
you.
so he's in my directory. So I'll send that to you, Herb.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Herb, it's dongrader@gmail.com.
Well, that was quick.
It was so quick. dongrader@gmail.com.
Yes, that's correct. Don Grader, all one word. DONGRAETER @gmail.com.
Great, thank you. Email Sabian from getting up at 6:30 next Thursday that he doesn't have to come to our Rotary.
Okay. We can move on. We're finished with the Council of Chase Matters Tree City application. Application was never put together mainly because I got a pretty bad cold at just about the time Linda and I were going to meet with Ron to put it in. So Linda arranged for appropriate delay with State Forestry Board. They agreed to give us time to meet again, and now we're looking to do that probably next week. Linda was saying Wednesday would probably work for her, and it would probably work for me. We need some time from Ron, and we could probably
Ron
do
did respond. He's suggesting 2 o'clock on Wednesday.
I think that'll work.
Okay.
2 p.m. on
2 o'clock on
Wednesday in
Wednesday.
his office.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So unless anybody has another comment or a question about Tree City, Linda and I will try to take care of that with Ron next week. The next item is other. Maybe there is no other right at the moment.
I have a question. Lee, how's Sandy doing?
Not very well, and she's having considerable pain. She's had broken limbs before, but for whatever set of reasons, this is considerably more troublesome to her. We just got off this morning with a doctor's phone conference in lieu of a meeting, and her elbow was broken into small fragments, and it's not really repairable. So they're relying on a brace, and they expect it to heal. They're recommending non-surgical treatment. So we're going to see how that goes. That she has a good brace on, and as I say, the doctors thinks that will work. He's not 100% certain, but he certainly thinks that. And she also may have had some spinal damage.
Oh,
We're getting a MRI of the spine tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. That's a great time. And see where that goes. That's actually a different doctor, both in the same practice. So let's say her recovery is pretty strained at the moment.
that's a shame.
Let her know we're thinking about her and thinking about you too, Lee.
Yeah, I will. And anyhow,
Yeah, please do.
that's it for her. And the only other thing left on the agenda is we can decide if next February 8th is appropriate meeting date.
Works for me. At 2
Anybody
o'clock,
else?
2 p.m.
I have nothing open or nothing closed, so, yep.
Okay for
Good
Andrea?
for me. Yep, it's good for me.
Okay. All right, let's set that. Nothing
Yes.
else? I move to adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Okay. Thanks to all very much.
February 8th is 2 p.m. Is that
Great.
correct?
It's great to have all the participation we've had, especially from you, Doug, and of course, our great team.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll get with you, Herb.
Okay, sounds great,
Okay.
Andrea.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Lee,
have a-
Linda, hang on a sec before you take
Okay.
off.
Sure.
On the stream here.